Okay, here's Algebra 2 Review, problem 8 and 49. So, on this problem here, why I put it on here, guys, is we got to make sure we definitely know the quadratic formula. And the first thing I want to remind you, see how it's equal to 0? We got to make sure it's equal to 0. Notice how the x squared, the 3x, and the 4 are in order from highest to lowest power. And that's what we want, because now we know that a is going to be 1. That's the coefficient of x squared. It's 1. We know that b is 3. b is always the coefficient of the x term. And c, our constant, is 4. And once you know a, b, and c, here comes the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula says we're going to do negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's plug our numbers in. If our b is 3, we're going to have the negative of 3 plus or minus b squared again is 3 minus 4. Our a is 1. Our c is 4. Now, what's really critical, guys, is I just want to remind you, always watch your signs, your negatives. You miss one negative, you're in trouble. The denominator is 2 times a. Again, our a is 1. Now, let's see what we get here. We get negative 3, of course, plus or minus. 2 times 1 is 2. Just a recommendation, I always save the square root for last. Just my preference. Now, 3 squared is 9, and I'm minusing 4 times 1 times 4, which is 16. So notice I end up with the square root of a negative, and we should know you cannot do a square root of a negative number. That is a complex number. That is imaginary. So our final answer here, guys, is negative 3 plus or minus square root of 7i over 2, which also could be written as negative 3 plus square root of 7i over 2, and negative 3 minus square root of 7i over 2. Just remember, there's 2 answers in one. The quadratic formula generally gives you 2 answers. And we end up with some complex numbers. All right, now let's solve this quadratic. Now this quadratic, notice right here, it's not equal to 0. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're actually going to minus 12 both sides. We're going to minus 12 both sides. That gives us x squared plus x minus 12 equal to 0. 12 minus 12 is 0, right? Now, I can do the quadratic formula, but look at all the answers, guys. See how they're integers? That tells me I should be able to factor this. So how about we do x times x? That gives us x squared. We know the 12 is generally 3 times 4. Now, I want a plus 1x in the middle, so I'm going to do a plus 4 minus 3. Again, this plus 4 minus 3 does make a positive 1 when added together. That's what we wanted. And, of course, a positive 4 times negative 3 gives us our negative 12. We're ready to solve. I know right here, x is going to be 3. Why? Because 3 minus 3 is 0. And right here, I know negative 4 is my second solution. Why? Because negative 4 plus this 4 is going to give me 0. So there's my 2 answers. And carefully, I'm going to pick D. I'm not going to be tricked by A. See how they change the sign on the 3 for us. But anyways, guys, this hopefully is a good video for you to study. hopefully you could see the power and the effectiveness of factoring. It's quicker and a little bit easier than the quadratic formula. But remember, the quadratic formula is very important because it always works. You can't always factor, but you can always do the quadratic formula. And sometimes, though, you end up with complex solutions.